My son's voice on the phone was completely calm. That's the part one keep coming back to. He was 12 years old and he called me at work on a Tuesday afternoon in October and he said, "Dad, there's a man asleep on the couch." Just like that. Flat. Matter of fact. The way he'd tell me we were out of milk. I was standing on the sideline of the practice field with a whistle around my neck and 43 varsity football players running drills 20 yards away and I said, "What?" And he said, "There's a man asleep on our couch. I don't know who he is." I told him to go to his room and lock the door and not come out. I told him I was coming home. I called 911 from the parking lot while I was running to my truck. I did not know yet that I already had this man on camera. I did not know yet that what was on that camera was going to be the thing that ended my marriage and started the rest of my life. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Ray. I'm 47 years old. I'd been a high school football coach for 16 years, defensive coordinator for 11 of those, head coach for the last 5 at a public high school in Denton, Texas. Before coaching full-time I worked construction for 8 years, framing mostly, which is where I got the habits I still have: measure twice, cut once, don't assume anything, check the work. I coached the way I built houses. Details matter. You miss a detail and something falls down. I've been married to my wife Carla for 14 years. We met when I was 33 and she was 29. She worked at the leasing office of an apartment complex near the school where I was coaching JV ball at the time. I came in to ask about a unit and she talked me through the floor plans and I asked her to dinner before I left the office. We got married 18 months later at a small ceremony in her parents' backyard in Mesquite. Carla's family is large and loud and close, 4 siblings, all within 20 miles of each other, Sunday dinners that run 3 hours minimum. I came from a quieter family and I loved the noise of hers. I loved how much they were all in each other's lives. I thought that was what I was marrying into. I thought I understood what it meant. We have one son. Derek. He was 12 at the time of all this, 13 now. He is a serious kid, not shy, not unfriendly, but measured. He thinks before he speaks. He doesn't get rattled easily. He gets that from my side, I think. He plays baseball, reads a lot of science fiction, builds model rockets with a level of precision that honestly impresses me, and I am a precise person. Derek and I are close in the way fathers and sons can be close when they're similar kinds of people. We don't talk a lot, but when we talk it's real and we understand each other. He knew something was wrong in our house before I did. I believe that now. He never said anything, but I think he knew. Carla was working from home 2 days a week. She had a job with a property management company different from the leasing work she did when we met, more administrative, regional coordination. She managed a portfolio of properties across North Texas. Good job. Good salary. She was good at it. On Tuesdays and Thursdays she worked from the house, set up in the spare bedroom we'd converted into her home office, door closed, calls and emails all day. This was normal. Had been normal for about 2 years since her company went hybrid after COVID. I was at the school 6 days a week during football season, September through November. I barely saw the inside of my own house before 8 or 9 at night. Derek took the bus home, let himself in, did homework, started dinner sometimes. He was capable. We'd raised him to be capable. That Tuesday in October, Derek came home from school at 3:40. Let himself in through the garage. Went to the kitchen to get a snack. Walked past the living room. And there was a man he did not recognize asleep on our couch with a throw blanket pulled over him. He didn't panic. He went back to the kitchen, got his phone, called me. I was on the sideline. I answered. He told me. I told him to lock himself in his room. I ran to my truck. Here is what the police found when they arrived. A man named Curtis Beale, 38 years old, asleep on my couch in my living room with his shoes off, a half-empty bottle of Shiner Bock on my coffee table, and my television tuned to a sports channel. He was not a burglar. He was not a stranger to my house. He woke up when the officers came in and he was confused and then he was embarrassed and then he was very, very quiet. My wife was not home. Her car was not in the garage. She was not, as I subsequently established, working from home that day. The spare bedroom office was empty. Her computer was closed. The officers got Curtis Beale's information. He had ID. He was not wanted for anything. He was cooperative. He said he was a friend of my wife's. He said she'd told him he could come by. He said he didn't realize she'd be out, he'd let himself in with the key she'd given him. He said this to a uniformed police officer in my living room with my son's bedroom door locked upstairs and my truck in the driveway. He said it like it was a reasonable explanation. I was standing in my own living room looking at this man and I was thinking about the Ring camera. I'd installed a Ring Video Doorbell Pro 18 months earlier, after a package got stolen off our porch Amazon delivery, nothing valuable, but it annoyed me. I'd also installed a Ring indoor cam in the living room, positioned on the bookshelf, angled toward the front door and the main seating area. I'd set it up, connected it to the app, and essentially forgotten about it. It was motion activated, it stored footage to the cloud. I checked it maybe once a month if I remembered. Carla knew it was there. We'd talked about it when I put it up. She'd said something like, "Good idea," and that was the end of it. I had not checked it in 6 weeks. After the police left, they took Curtis Beale's information, gave him a trespass warning since he'd technically entered with a key the homeowner had provided, but documented everything and gave me a case number. I sat in my living room for about 10 minutes. Derek came downstairs. He sat next to me. He didn't say anything. I put my arm around him and we sat there together for a while. Then I said, "You did good today, bud." He nodded. He went back upstairs. I opened the Ring app on my phone. What I found in the next 2 hours sitting at my own kitchen table was 14 months of my marriage rearranged into something I didn't recognize. The Ring indoor cam had been recording motion-triggered events the entire time. I hadn't checked it regularly, but the cloud had kept everything. Ring stores up to 60 days of footage on the plan I had. I had 60 days. I started at the beginning of the 60-day window and I worked forward. Tuesday and Thursday, almost every week, between roughly 10 in the morning and 2:30 in the afternoon, the camera recorded activity in my living room. Curtis Beale. Sometimes arriving with groceries. Sometimes already there when Carla came downstairs from the office, meaning he'd come in through the back or the garage, which she could open remotely. Sometimes they were on the couch. Sometimes they went upstairs and the living room was empty for an hour or more and then they came back down. I watched 60 days of footage in 2 hours. I did not cry. I did not throw anything. I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of water I didn't drink and I watched my marriage on a 4-inch screen and I felt something I can only describe as a very deep cold settling into the center of my chest. I had enough footage to fill a documentary. I took screenshots of the clearest frames, timestamped, his face clearly visible, context unmistakable. I sent them to my email. I backed them up to a Google Drive folder I created from a Gmail account I made that afternoon using my work laptop. I labeled the folder with the date and nothing else. I downloaded the Ring app on that same laptop and logged in and downloaded the actual video files, not just screenshots, the full clips. I had hours of footage. All of it time-stamped. All of it in my cloud backup by 7 p.m. that evening. Then I called my brother-in-law. Not Carla's brother. My brother. Older than me by 4 years. Lives in Plano, Works in commercial real estate. His name is Vincent. I called him and I said I needed a lawyer recommendation, family law, tonight if possible. He asked me one question. I said yes. He said he'd call me back in 20 minutes. He called back in 15 with a name and a number. The attorney's name was Patricia Okafor. Vincent said she was excellent and that I should call her first thing in the morning. Carla came home at 6:40 that evening. She came in through the garage and she looked surprised to see my truck in the driveway. I was usually at the school until 8 during season. I was sitting at the kitchen table. I had closed the laptop. I had nothing visible in front of me. I said, "The police came today." She stopped. I said, "Derek called me. There was a man asleep on our couch." I watched her face. She did not ask me who. She said, "Ray," I said, "Derek is upstairs. I need you to hold whatever you're about to say until we can talk privately." She nodded. She put down her bag. She went upstairs. I heard her knock on Derek's door. I heard muffled conversation. She came back down 15 minutes later. I did not ask her questions that night. I told her I knew and that I was getting a lawyer and that I needed her to sleep in the guest room. She started to say something several times and each time I said, "Not tonight." Eventually she went to the guest room. I sat up until 2 in the morning going through ring footage I had already gone through. Not looking for new information. Just sitting with it. Patricia Okafor had a 9 a.m. opening the next morning. I was in her office in Addison at 8:50 with my laptop and a list of questions I'd written on a legal pad. She was in her late 40s, direct, no wasted words. She looked at what I had to the ring footage, the screenshots, the timestamps, the police case number from the trespass call. She said, "This is significant documentation." She explained how Texas divorce law works. Texas is a community property state, but fault grounds can affect asset division. Adultery is a recognized fault ground in Texas. What I had on that camera, she said, was as clear a documentation of an ongoing adulterous relationship as she'd seen in a while. She asked me about finances. Joint accounts. The house, we owned it, had been paying the mortgage for 11 years, significant equity. Retirement accounts. She asked if I had reason to believe marital funds had been used in connection with the affair. I thought about the groceries I'd seen Curtis Beale bring in on the ring footage. I thought about the Shiner Bock on my coffee table. Small things. But Patricia said small things add up and she wanted a forensic look at the joint accounts over the past 14 months. She filed the divorce petition the following Monday. Here is where the turn happened. And this one I did not see coming. Patricia's forensic accountant started looking at the joint accounts and found what you'd expect: some cash withdrawals, some restaurant charges on days I was at work, nothing enormous. But he also found a recurring monthly transfer of $400 from our joint checking to an account Patricia's team couldn't immediately identify. 14 months of transfers. $5,600 total. The account was a Venmo transfer that linked to a business account registered to a company called BCB Property Services LLC. Patricia ran BCB Property Services LLC. It was registered in Texas. One owner. Curtis Beale. Curtis Beale ran a small handyman and property maintenance business. He serviced rental properties, did odd jobs, minor repairs. His LLC had been registered for 3 years. And for 14 months, my wife had been sending him $400 a month from our joint checking account. The transfers were labeled maintenance in the memo line. Patricia brought this to me on a Thursday afternoon. I sat in her office and I looked at the Venmo records and the LLC registration and I said, she was paying him. Patricia said it appeared so. She said the question for the court would be whether this represented dissipation of marital assets, marital funds spent for the benefit of a third party outside the marriage. In Texas, this matters at settlement. The judge can consider it in how community property is divided. I thought about the groceries again. The Shiner Bock. The key she'd given him. $400 a month. For 14 months. She'd built a whole arrangement and she'd funded it with our joint account and labeled it maintenance. I almost had to admire the audacity of that label. Almost. The divorce proceedings in Texas can move relatively quickly when there's documentation and the parties are willing to engage with the process. Carla hired an attorney. Her attorney, to his credit, assessed the situation fairly quickly and apparently advised her that contesting this aggressively would not go well for her given what I had. We had a mediation session in January, 3 months after Derek's phone call, that ran about 6 hours and produced an agreement. The house was appraised at $390,000. We'd built about $180,000 in equity over 11 years. In a standard 50-50 split that would have been $90,000 each. But Patricia argued the dissipation of marital assets, the $5,600 in Venmo transfers, plus documented expenditures from the joint account on dates that corresponded to Curtis Beale's presence in the house, and the judge at our final hearing agreed. The split was adjusted. I received $118,000 from the equity settlement. Carla received $62,000. I also received primary physical custody of Derek. This was not contested. I don't know exactly what conversation happened between Carla and her attorney about custody, but she did not fight it. Derek lives with me. He sees his mother every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. He has handled this with the same steadiness he handled that Tuesday phone call, processing things quietly, not falling apart, asking occasional direct questions that I answer as honestly as I can. The house sold in March. I bought a smaller house in the same school district. I wasn't going to make Derek change schools, 3 bedrooms, decent yard, needs some work which I am more than capable of doing. I've replaced the front porch boards and repainted the exterior and put in a proper concrete pad in the garage for Derek's rocket building. He built a level 3 high-power rocket this past spring that went to about 2,400 feet. I drove him to a launch event out near Waxahachie and stood in a field and watched it go up and come down on a parachute perfectly, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Just clean pride. Clean and uncomplicated. Carla is renting an apartment in Frisco. I understand she and Curtis Beale are no longer in contact. I heard this from a peripheral source and I have not verified it, and I don't need to. What she does is her life. What she did in my house is documented and settled and behind me. There are nights in football season when I get home at 9:30 and Derek is already asleep and the house is quiet and I sit in the kitchen for a while before I go to bed. I think about the 14 years. I think about what was real in them and what wasn't. Most of it was real. I have to believe that. The Sunday dinners at her parents' house were real. Derek is real. The morning we brought Derek home from the hospital and I sat in the rocking chair in his room at 3 a.m. feeding him a bottle while Carla slept, that was real. What she did later doesn't erase what was real. It just means the real things ended earlier than they should have. I check the Ring camera now. Every day. Not because I'm paranoid. Just because it's a habit I've built. Measure twice. Check the work. I've always been that way. Derek will be going into 8th grade in the fall. He's already talking about high school, about joining the engineering elective, about whether he wants to try out for baseball or focus on the rocketry club. I listen to all of it. I ask questions. I drive him to the places he needs to go. That's the job now. That's the main job. I know how to do it.